Ethan was just your average student at the Interstellar Academy of Xenobiology. He wasn't anything special, just a human trying to get through his studies, while also trying to figure out the complicated world of intergalactic diplomacy. Earth had been part of the Galactic Alliance for a few years now, and humans were still learning how to interact with alien species, and sometimes it felt like those species were still learning how to interact with humans. Ethan had spent most of his first semester on Earth, focused on his studies and avoiding trouble. He never thought he'd be in a situation like this, rooming with an alien. It all started when he got his new roommate assignment. He had hoped for someone quiet, someone who didn't mind the fact that he had a mountain of homework and only a few hours of sleep. But the academy had other plans. His new roommate, Zira, was from the Thraxi, a species he'd never encountered before. When Zira first arrived, Ethan was nervous. He had heard that the Thraxi were known for their curiosity and their commitment to studying the unknown, but he wasn't sure what to expect. He was used to human roommates, where things like personal space and respect were pretty clear. But alien roommates, that was a whole different story. Zira was tall, very tall, and had a smooth, iridescent green skin that shimmered under the dorm lights. Her eyes were large, black, and reflecting every little detail in the room. She seemed to be taking in everything with the intensity of a scientist, which, to be fair, she probably was. When Zira spoke, her voice was melodic, but not like anything Ethan had ever heard. It was as if each word was carefully measured and full of curiosity. "Greetings, Ethan," she said, her head tilting slightly as she extended her hand. Ethan, startled, hesitated. On Earth, a handshake was a normal greeting, but was it the same with aliens? He had no idea how the Thraxi communicated. Still, trying to be polite, he extended his hand, only to watch in horror as Zira grabbed it with both of her long, delicate fingers. The grip was gentle, but oddly firm, and it felt as though her hands were studying every part of his own. "Your hand is so soft," she said, fascinated. "Interesting." Ethan awkwardly cleared his throat. "Yeah, thanks." Zira tilted her head again, looking at him with intense curiosity. "I must understand more about humans. Your physiology is quite different from mine. Your hands are much smaller than mine, and your skin so soft. How do you function with such fragile bodies?" Ethan blinked, still trying to process what she meant. "Well, we've learned to make up for it with tools, technology, and, good instincts." Zira was silent for a moment, clearly thinking. Ethan had no idea how to react to her endless questions. "I wish to study your anatomy, Ethan," she said finally, her tone one of excitement. Ethan froze. Study his anatomy. Was this some kind of weird alien custom? He didn't know what to say, so he stammered. Well, I'm not sure that's a good idea." But Zira wasn't dissuaded. "I do not mean harm. I wish to learn. My species values knowledge above all. I must study you to understand. Your body, how it works, how it is so fragile." "Fragile," Ethan repeated, his eyes wide. "Fragile? Well, I'm not that fragile." Zira seemed completely unfazed by his reaction. "You are fragile. Your bones, your muscles, your skin. It's all soft. It doesn't make sense. Thraxi are strong. Our bodies are hard, resilient. You, humans, are different." Ethan wasn't sure whether to be offended or amused, but the more he looked at Zira, the more he realized she wasn't being rude. She was genuinely curious. And in her eyes, his body wasn't something to be dismissed. It was a puzzle waiting to be solved. Trying to keep his cool, Ethan said, Okay, listen, I get that you're interested, but I think there's a better way to study human anatomy than, well, hands-on." Zira paused for a moment, then tilted her head. "What do you mean by hands-on?" Ethan realized he'd made another mistake. What did humans consider hands-on could mean something completely different to an alien. I just mean we could, use books or, holograms. Stuff like that. Zira blinked, processing the information. Holograms. Yeah, Ethan said, relieved to find something he could use to steer the conversation in a safer direction. I can show you some of those. No hands involved, I promise. Zira's curiosity didn't seem to be satisfied with this suggestion, but she agreed. We will learn this way for now, but I will study more, Ethan. I must learn how you humans survive in such delicate bodies. Ethan sighed and looked at his new roommate. This was going to be a very interesting year. Ethan hadn't expected the situation to escalate so quickly. The first few days with Zira were awkward, but manageable. She wasn't malicious, far from it, but her curiosity about humans seemed to have no bounds. Each day, she asked more questions, often in ways that made Ethan wonder if she had truly understood the concept of personal boundaries. But Zira wasn't from Earth, and she didn't know what to expect. She was learning, just like he was. It wasn't just her questions about human anatomy that made Ethan nervous. It was how intense she was about getting answers. Zira didn't seem to grasp the concept of privacy. On the second night of their rooming situation, she had opened a book about the human skeletal system and began asking detailed questions about his own bones. Your bones are so delicate, she had said, studying the book. Why are they so thin? How do you survive? Ethan had tried to keep calm, but the words still felt invasive. We, have evolved to be less reliant on physical strength. It's our minds and technology that give us the advantage. Zira had nodded thoughtfully but still seemed puzzled. So you use your minds to make up for your weak bodies. Not weak, Ethan replied quickly, shaking his head. Just different. But it wasn't just his body Zira was curious about. She also asked about humans' emotions, our relationships, and the way we interacted with one another. At first, Ethan thought it was interesting to share these aspects of his culture, but soon, the questions began to pile up. How do humans bond with each other? What makes you trust each other? What keeps you from hurting one another? She asked one evening, her eyes wide with genuine curiosity. Trust. Well, it's complicated, Ethan said, feeling a little overwhelmed. We form relationships based on shared experiences, mutual respect, and, love. Zira raised an eyebrow. Love? What is love? How does it make you act differently than other creatures? Ethan was taken aback. He had never thought about explaining love to an alien. It was such a basic human experience, yet here he was, trying to explain something so fundamental. Love is a deep connection. It makes people care about each other in ways that go beyond logic. It's what bonds us. Zira stared at him for a long moment, her eyes reflecting the light of the room. Then she said, I do not understand, but I will learn. Humans are strange. Ethan laughed nervously, glad to deflect the tension. Yeah, we are. It wasn't until the next day that the real cultural clash happened. Ethan had just returned from class, hoping for a quiet evening, when he walked into their shared dorm room and froze. Zira was standing in the middle of the room, holding a strange metallic device. It looked like a cross between a scanner and a medical tool. What's that? Ethan asked, his voice shaky. It is a tool for studying anatomy, Zira said, not noticing the concern in his tone. I have built it using your research materials. It will help me analyze you more effectively. Hold on, Ethan said quickly, raising a hand. We agreed on no. Hands on studying, remember. Zira blinked, clearly confused. This is not the same. It is a device that only scans your body. No touch is required. I can learn about your anatomy from a distance. Ethan took a deep breath. Look, I get that you want to learn about humans, but this is it's too much. I don't want to be studied like some specimen in a lab. Zira tilted her head, her large eyes studying him carefully. I do not understand, Ethan. In my culture, this is how we learn. We observe, we study, we understand. There is no harm in it. It is the most respectful way. Ethan stared at the device in her hand, unsure of how to respond. Zira was so genuine, but the way she viewed human interaction seemed so different from anything he had ever known. He realized that to her, this wasn't invasive. It was just how knowledge was gained. "I know," Ethan said, trying to calm down. "I understand it's normal for you. But here, we need to respect each other's personal space. Human bodies aren't public subjects. We don't study people like this unless they choose to." Zira paused, the confusion on her face slowly turning into understanding. "I see now. Your ways are different. I will respect your boundaries, Ethan." Ethan gave a small sigh of relief. "Thanks, Zira. I appreciate it." Zira lowered the device, a look of determination crossing her face. "But I will still learn about humans. I will find another way." Ethan couldn't help but smile. "Just no more surprise scanners, okay?" "Agreed," she said, nodding earnestly. "We will figure it out together." Ethan wasn't sure how, but he had a feeling this year with Zira was going to be full of surprises. Ethan woke up the next morning with a sigh of relief. The tension in the room had eased since the incident with Zira and her scanning device. He had been worried that their cultural differences would make living together impossible, but Zira's willingness to understand human customs gave him hope. She wasn't like the other aliens he'd met. She genuinely wanted to learn about humanity, not just observe from a distance. That morning, as Ethan was making his breakfast, Zira walked into the kitchen. Her usual curiosity was written all over her face, but today she seemed calmer. "Good morning, Ethan." She greeted him in her soft, melodic voice, her large eyes studying him carefully. "I have been thinking about what you said yesterday. About boundaries." Ethan smiled, glad that she was taking his words seriously. "Morning, Zira. I'm glad to see you're considering it. Personal space is important to humans. We don't mind being around others, but we like to choose when and how we share our space." Zira nodded, her skin shimmering under the light as she focused on his words. "I understand. Your boundaries are a form of respect, yes." "That's right," Ethan said, turning to face her as he stirred his coffee. "Respect is a big part of it. We respect each other's space and choices, and when we respect others, it helps us get along better." Zira appeared deep in thought for a moment, her long fingers tapping gently against the counter. "I see. In my culture, we do not have such boundaries. We share knowledge freely, and our bodies are not viewed with such separation. But I understand your ways now. I will respect your space, Ethan." Ethan felt a bit of relief. Zira seemed to be genuinely trying to adapt to human customs. He didn't know if she would ever fully understand the human concept of personal space, but at least she was making an effort. "So," Ethan said with a teasing grin, "does that mean no more surprise anatomy lessons?" Zira's eyes widened. No, no more surprise lessons. I promise. I have learned to respect your boundaries." She paused and then added with a slight tilt of her head, "But may I still study human anatomy, just in a different way?" Ethan was taken aback for a moment. Zira's curiosity about humans was unrelenting, but he could see that she had truly tried to understand his need for space. She wasn't asking to invade his privacy anymore, and that was a step in the right direction. "You can study anatomy, just maybe not me," Ethan said, giving her a smile. "There are plenty of resources at the academy. You can use holograms or textbooks. I'm sure the professors have plenty of materials for you to work with." Zira's face lit up at the suggestion. "Yes, holograms. I have seen these in the academy. They are very detailed, yes." "They're pretty amazing," Ethan replied. "They'll give you a 3D view of human anatomy from every angle. No need for hands-on work. You can learn all you want without stepping into someone's personal space." Zira grinned, clearly excited by the idea. "This will be perfect. I will study human anatomy through these holograms. I will not need to touch or scan you, and I will still learn." Ethan laughed. Exactly. And if you need help understanding something, you can always ask me. I know a thing or two about human anatomy. Zira's eyes shone with excitement. I will be sure to ask you, Ethan. I have much to learn. As Zira went off to start her study session, Ethan felt a sense of relief wash over him. For the first time since their odd introduction, he felt like they had reached an understanding. Zira was still incredibly curious, but now there was a balance between her thirst for knowledge and his need for privacy. Later that day, as Ethan sat down to study in their shared dorm room, he couldn't help but smile. Zira had already set up a holographic display of the human circulatory system. She was watching it intently, taking notes with a focus that reminded Ethan of the determination he saw in his own fellow students. He walked over to her and peered at the display. "How's it going?" Zira glanced up, her face filled with wonder. "This is incredible. I can see the blood flow through the body in real time. It is more detailed than I imagined." Ethan chuckled. "Yeah, it's pretty impressive." He paused. "So, do you have any more questions?" Zira's large eyes locked onto his. "Yes, I have many questions, but I will respect your boundaries, Ethan. I will not ask unless it is necessary." Ethan smiled. He could see that Zira's curiosity was unquenchable, but now it was tempered with an understanding of human boundaries. This wasn't going to be easy, but it seemed that little by little, they were figuring it out. Maybe this year would turn out to be even more interesting than he had expected. The next few weeks passed with a surprising ease. Zira had been respectful of Ethan's boundaries, and Ethan had grown used to her endless curiosity about human anatomy and culture. While it was still strange at times, he was beginning to enjoy her questions. They weren't just about his body anymore. Now she was asking about the way humans thought, acted, and connected with one another. In a way, it was refreshing to have someone so genuinely interested in learning. One afternoon, as Ethan sat in their dorm room studying, Zira walked in with an excited gleam in her eyes. She had been spending more and more time in the holographic labs, and he could tell she had made progress. "Ethan," she said, her voice full of enthusiasm, "I have discovered something fascinating about human anatomy." Ethan looked up from his textbook and raised an eyebrow. "Something fascinating." "I'm intrigued." Zira's eyes were practically glowing. "I have been studying the human muscular system. Your muscles are not as strong as Athrax's, but you use them in a very unique way. Your strength is not just in the power of your limbs, but in your fine motor control. I believe humans rely on small, precise movements more than raw power." Ethan smiled, feeling a bit proud of his species. "That's right. We use our brains to make up for what we lack in physical strength. Our fine motor skills allow us to do things that require precision, like writing, painting, or even using tools. It's one of the reasons we've been so successful as a species." Zira nodded thoughtfully. "Fascinating. This will help me understand humans better." She paused for a moment before looking directly at him. "But I have another question, Ethan." Ethan sighed, knowing there was more to come. "Go ahead. What's the next question?" Zira hesitated, clearly trying to choose her words carefully. "I was wondering if you could help me understand the human circulatory system in more detail. I believe seeing it firsthand might help me understand it better. Would you mind if I observed it up close?" Ethan was caught off guard. He had expected her curiosity to continue, but now she was asking for something he hadn't anticipated. Zira wanted to observe the circulatory system in action, but this time she was asking for a more direct connection to human anatomy. He swallowed, unsure of how to respond. On one hand, Zira had respected his boundaries so far, and he trusted her not to cross any lines. But on the other hand, this request felt different. It wasn't just a theoretical study anymore. She wanted to observe his body in a more intimate way. "Zira," he began cautiously, "I think there's a way for you to learn about the circulatory system without, well, getting too close. The holographic displays can show the blood flow through the body in real time. You don't need to observe someone's body to understand how it works. Zira's face fell slightly, but she quickly regained her composure. I understand, Ethan, but the display is just a model. It does not show the true experience of blood flowing through the human body. I wish to understand it on a deeper level. It is the only way for me to fully grasp how it works. Ethan could see the sincerity in her eyes. Zira wasn't trying to push him into something uncomfortable. She was just determined to understand, no matter the method. He took a deep breath and thought for a moment. "All right, Zira," he said, slowly making up his mind. "I'll let you observe it, but only under one condition. You must promise to respect my personal space. No physical contact, and no invasive procedures. You can watch how my circulatory system works, but that's it." Zira's face lit up with a mixture of excitement and gratitude. "I promise, Ethan. I will respect your boundaries." They arranged a time later that day for Zira to observe the circulatory system in action. Ethan knew that it was a big step, but he also understood that Zira was sincere in her desire to learn. She wasn't doing this out of any sense of entitlement or disrespect. She just wanted to understand how humans function on a deeper level. When the time came, Zira set up a special holographic display in the room, one that focused on the circulatory system. It showed the path of blood as it moved through the heart, lungs, and arteries in real time. Zira watched in awe, her large eyes following the flow of the blood, as if it were the most amazing thing she'd ever seen. Ethan, for his part, remained calm. He could feel Zira's gaze on him as the display flickered with images of his circulatory system. It was a strange feeling, being observed so closely, but he reminded himself that she was just learning. For the first time, Ethan felt like they were truly sharing something. Zira was fascinated by the inner workings of the human body, and he was teaching her about it in a way that respected his boundaries. It wasn't hands-on, but it was a step closer to mutual understanding. "Your circulatory system is incredible, Ethan," Zira said, her voice full of admiration. "It is so intricate, so complex. I now understand why humans are so adaptable. You rely on your minds and bodies to work together in ways I never imagined." Ethan smiled. "Thanks, Zira. I'm glad you're starting to understand." As they continued to study together, Ethan realized that this strange, interspecies roommate situation was turning into a valuable learning experience for both of them. It had been a few weeks since Zira had begun her focused study of human anatomy, and Ethan had started to feel a bit more comfortable around his alien roommate. She respected his boundaries and had been diving deep into her studies, often using holographic displays or textbooks to learn more. It was clear that Zira had a thirst for knowledge that could rival anyone Ethan had ever met, and he had to admit, it was a bit impressive. But despite her good intentions, Zira still wasn't always aware of the nuances of human behavior, and there were moments when she made Ethan feel, well, awkward. Like this afternoon. Ethan had just finished a long day of classes and was looking forward to a quiet evening. He settled into his chair with a book, ready to unwind, when Zira entered the room, her usual curiosity shining through. "Ethan," she exclaimed, her voice full of excitement, "I have a new question." Ethan sighed, setting his book aside. He had a feeling he wouldn't be getting a peaceful evening anytime soon. "What's up now, Zira?" Zira didn't seem to notice his tiredness as she beamed at him. "I've been studying human sleep patterns. I read that humans need to sleep for several hours a night to function. But I have a question. Do you dream while you sleep?" Ethan blinked. Yeah, most people do." "Why?" Zira's eyes grew even wider. "Fascinating. I have read about dreams in your species' literature, but I have never understood them. Why do humans dream? What is the purpose?" Ethan scratched his head, unsure of how to explain something as complex as dreams in simple terms. "Well, dreams are part of our brain's way of processing things. They help us work through emotions, thoughts, and experiences. Sometimes dreams can just be random, but they can also help us deal with things we might not fully understand when we're awake. Zira nodded thoughtfully. That is very interesting. I have been studying your neural systems, and I know that humans have an extremely advanced brain. But how does it connect with your dreams? Ethan chuckled. That's a tough question. Scientists are still trying to figure out all the details. Some say dreams are a way for our brains to organize memories, while others think they might be our subconscious mind trying to tell us something. Zira's eyes gleamed. This is so intriguing. I must learn more. Perhaps I should observe your dreams. Ethan's face immediately flushed, and he quickly shook his head. Wait, what? No, I'm not sure that's something you can observe. Dreams are, very personal. It's not something I can just show you. Zira tilted her head, confusion written all over her face. But if dreams are so important, surely you would not mind sharing them with me. I could analyze them and understand your species better. Ethan, feeling a bit panicked, scrambled for a response. Look, Zira, dreams aren't something I can just control. They're not like the things we can study in the lab. They happen in my head when I sleep, and well, I can't just make them appear or show them to you. They're private. Zira's expression softened as she tried to understand. I see. Dreams are not just a physical phenomenon, but also something intimate, yes. Ethan took a deep breath, relieved that she was finally getting it. Exactly. They're personal to each person, and not something I can just share. Zira looked thoughtful for a moment before nodding. I understand. I apologize for asking. I was only trying to understand the human experience more deeply. Ethan smiled, glad that Zira was willing to listen. It's okay. I get where you're coming from. But some things, like dreams, are just meant to stay personal. Zira gave him a small, genuine smile. I will respect that. I will find another way to learn about your species. It was moments like these that reminded Ethan just how different Zira was from anyone he had known. She wasn't trying to be invasive or disrespectful. She just didn't always understand where the line was. And while he wasn't always sure how to handle her questions, he was beginning to appreciate her sincerity. A few days later, Zira came up with another idea for her studies. This time, she wanted to learn about human emotional responses. She had already studied how the brain processes fear, joy, and sadness, but now she wanted to understand how these emotions affected human interactions. Ethan, Zira said one evening, I have a proposal. I want to observe how humans express emotions in social situations. Would you be willing to participate in an experiment? Ethan raised an eyebrow. An experiment? What kind of experiment? Zira smiled eagerly. I will observe how you react in different social situations. For example, when you are happy or sad, I will analyze your body language and expressions. I will not intrude, but I will record your responses to better understand how your emotions shape your actions. Ethan thought for a moment. While it was a little strange, Zira had made it clear that she wasn't interested in invading his space or his privacy. She simply wanted to learn. All right, Zira, I'll help you with your experiment, but no surprise tests this time, okay? Zira beamed. Agreed, Ethan. I promise to respect your boundaries. As they continued to learn and grow together, Ethan realized that living with Zira was a constant balancing act. But it was also an incredible opportunity. And despite the challenges, he was beginning to appreciate the experience more than he had expected. As the days passed, Ethan grew more accustomed to Zira's ever-growing curiosity. Despite the occasional awkward moments, their arrangement was working better than he had expected. Zira's fascination with human anatomy and emotions continued, but now there was a level of respect between them that made things easier. One evening, as Ethan returned to their dorm room after a long day of classes, Zira was already waiting for him with an excited expression on her face. She was holding a small device in her hand, which looked like a portable scanner, but with a sleek, unfamiliar design. Ethan, she called out as he walked through the door. I am ready to begin the next phase of my study on human emotions. Ethan raised an eyebrow, intrigued but slightly wary. Another study, huh? What's this one about? Zira's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. I want to observe your emotional responses in social situations, as I mentioned before. But this time, I have developed a new tool to help with my research. She held up the small device, which seemed to hum lightly as it activated. This scanner will not interfere with your personal space. It only observes subtle changes in body language, such as your heart rate and breathing patterns when you feel different emotions. Ethan blinked. Wait, you want to track my emotions with that thing? Zira nodded. It is the best way for me to understand how your emotions affect your physical responses. I promise it will not cause any discomfort. I only need to monitor your reactions from a distance, and you will be able to go about your day as usual. Ethan hesitated, but he could see the genuine excitement in Zira's eyes. This wasn't about invading his privacy. It was about helping her understand humans better. All right, Zira. But let's keep it simple. No crazy experiments. Just observe me when I'm doing normal things. Zira's expression softened in understanding. I will respect your wishes, Ethan. You will not even notice the scanner after I activate it. They sat down together at the small table in their room, and Zira carefully placed the scanner on the table between them. Now, Ethan, I would like to observe your emotions while you eat. We will begin with something simple, how you respond to food. Ethan chuckled. All right, sounds easy enough. I'm guessing you're wondering if I enjoy food. Zira smiled. Exactly. I have read that humans have strong emotional reactions to food, both in terms of pleasure and comfort. I want to see how your body reacts to something you enjoy. Ethan smiled as he sat down to his meal. I can already tell you're right. Food's a big deal for us. But let's see what the scanner says. As Ethan ate his dinner, he noticed the scanner's quiet hum, though he could barely feel its presence. Zira watched him carefully, her large eyes attentive to every detail. After a few moments, she nodded in satisfaction. I can see the patterns, Ethan. Your heartbeat and breathing rate have both increased slightly, indicating a positive emotional response. I can tell you are enjoying the meal. Ethan laughed. You could have just asked. I think everyone gets happy when they eat their favorite food. Zira made a note on her device, clearly absorbed in the data. It is fascinating to see how emotions are reflected in the body. Humans are so complex. I can see that your emotions affect your physical state in real time. As the night went on, Zira continued her observations, noting Ethan's reactions to different activities. She recorded his laughter when he joked with her, his focused concentration when he studied, and even the small signs of stress when he worked on assignments. It was clear to her that humans experienced emotions deeply, and those emotions influenced every action and thought. Later, as they sat on the couch, Zira began to discuss her findings. Ethan, I have learned so much from these observations. I can now understand how your emotions connect to your actions in a way that I never thought possible. It is as if your feelings guide everything you do. Ethan nodded, feeling proud of the progress they had made. Yeah, emotions play a huge role in how we act. Sometimes they can even help us make decisions. Zira looked thoughtful. So, emotions can be a source of power for humans, not just in how you interact with others, but in how you think and create. Ethan smiled. Exactly. Our emotions drive us. They can help us make things like art, music, and even invent new technology. Emotions aren't just reactions. They're part of what makes us who we are. Zira's eyes lit up with excitement. This is incredible, Ethan. I feel like I am beginning to understand human nature in a way I never imagined. Your emotions are not just an outcome of external factors, but something that is deeply connected to your identity. Ethan laughed, feeling more at ease than he had in a while. I guess you could say that. And now you know why humans are so unpredictable. You never quite know what someone will do next when emotions are involved. Zira smiled warmly. I look forward to learning even more. Ethan, you have opened my understanding of your species. As the night wound down, Ethan realized just how far he and Zira had come. What had started as an awkward and sometimes uncomfortable living situation had turned into something far more rewarding. Zira's curiosity, though intense, had helped him understand himself and humanity in a new way. And maybe, just maybe, he was starting to see things from her point of view too. It had been several months since Ethan and Zira had first become roommates. What had once seemed like a strange, awkward arrangement had evolved into something far more profound. Ethan no longer found Zira's constant questions about human anatomy or emotions to be uncomfortable. Instead, he had come to respect her genuine desire to understand and learn. Zira had, in her own way, become a bridge between him and an entirely new perspective on the world. This evening, however, something felt different. Zira had asked Ethan to meet her in the common area for a final experiment. At first, Ethan had been reluctant. After all, he had agreed to help her learn about human emotions, anatomy, and behavior. But now it felt like they were nearing the end of their study. When he walked into the room, he was greeted by a calm, focused Zira sitting in front of a large display screen. There was something about the way she looked at him that made him feel like this was going to be more than just another experiment. "Ethan," Zira said softly, her voice carrying a sense of purpose. "I have one last request. I have learned so much from you, and I feel that I now understand human nature in a way I could never have imagined. But there is one thing I have not yet fully grasped." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" Zira paused for a moment, as if searching for the right words. "I want to understand connection. I study how emotions drive your actions, and I've observed how your mind works. But what I don't fully understand is how humans form bonds. I want to learn how connection feels, not just in terms of behavior, but in a deeper emotional way." Ethan was taken aback. This was different from anything they had discussed before. The request was so personal. "Zira," he began cautiously, "are you asking to, observe how humans connect on a deeper level? How we form friendships or relationships?" Zira nodded. "Yes. I have seen how you interact with others, how you care for them, how you express affection, but I still don't fully understand it. How do humans form those connections? How does it feel?" Ethan thought for a moment. He had always thought of connections between people as something that simply happened. It was part of being human. But now, faced with Zira's request, he realized he had never really considered the depth of it before. "You're asking about something more than just actions," Ethan said slowly. "You're asking how we feel about the people we connect with. It's not something you can really see. It's something you experience." Zira's eyes softened. "That's exactly what I don't understand. I want to experience it too, but I don't know where to start." Ethan looked at her, understanding dawning. She had spent so much time studying the physical and emotional aspects of humans, but now she wanted to explore something far more intangible, the feeling of connection. He realized this was her way of asking for something truly special, not just knowledge, but a shared experience. "I don't know if I can show you how it feels," Ethan said quietly, "but I can try to help you understand. I've learned a lot from you, too, Zira. And maybe, just maybe, we can help each other." Zira's face lit up with the faintest smile. "You would help me understand this?" Ethan nodded. "Of course. It's not something you can really study with scanners or displays. But we can try to talk about it, share moments together, and see where that takes us. Connection isn't something that can be measured. It's something we experience in small, everyday things." They spent the evening talking, really talking, for the first time in a long while. Ethan shared his experiences of friendship, of what it meant to feel close to someone, to rely on them, and to care for them. He spoke of how a simple gesture, like sharing a meal or laughing together, could create bonds that lasted. Zira listened intently, her large eyes never leaving his face. It wasn't just about the facts anymore. She wasn't taking notes or running scans. She was just present, listening, trying to grasp the intangible. As the evening drew to a close, Zira spoke softly. "Ethan, I think I understand. At least a little. Connection is not just something you study. It's something you feel, something you share. It's a bond that grows over time." Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth he hadn't expected. "That's exactly it. And it's something you can only truly understand by experiencing it yourself. Maybe you've started to feel it, too." Zira paused for a moment before speaking again. "I think I have. Our time together, the things we've shared, they've created something I didn't expect. A bond, I think. A connection." Ethan felt a mix of emotions, gratitude, warmth, and even a bit of surprise. This whole experience had changed him too. He had learned not just about Zira, but about himself, and about the ways humans connect. "Yeah," he said, nodding. "I think we've got a connection, too. And that's something you can't study in a lab." As they sat together in the quiet room, both of them felt the unspoken understanding between them. It wasn't something that could be measured with scanners or analyzed by algorithms. It was simply something they shared, something real. And in that moment, they both knew that, no matter where life took them next, this bond, this connection, would remain.